Hey everybody, Bear Tracker here on South Fork Eel River, and once again I found a water-based animal. Tracks. Look at those. Whose tracks are those? Look how big they are. Very small. These are mink tracks. And it's moving along here. And I will show you these tracks a little closer up in just a moment. So we're looking at a perfect set of mink tracks here. These are the right tracks. This is the right hind on top of the right front. And you can tell that by looking at the way this track landed. So the hind track is on top of this one, which is the front track. This is the right front track. Look at this pad right here, which is called the Metacarpal Pad. Some folks call it the palm pad. But it goes like this. There's a pad here associated with toe 5. There's a pad here associated with toe number 4 and 3. A smaller pad here associated with toe 2. And then toe 1 has a little tiny pad. So this one is your front track. There's a small carpal pad back here, whoops, excuse me, and then the hind track, which landed on top of this front track here, this is the hind. So you see 4 toes really clearly, and we don't see the 5th toe, which should be somewhere down here. So the 5th toe is toe number 1. So there's 2, 3, 4, and 5 are how you number those toes. This hind track, if you looked at it just by itself, cover up the rest of the track, it looks very canine-like, almost like a fox track, but it's not, it's a mink. So this is right front and right hind of a mink. Now let's go find some front tracks. I didn't mean to say front tracks, I actually meant to say some left tracks. So this one's kind of cool because my cat's track is right on top of it. So I'm out here walking around on the river bar with my cat, Bees. This is his track. And he just walked across these tracks and left some perfect little tracks for me. Domestic cat tracks. Heading in this direction. So this one right here and here, these are your mink tracks. Those are the left tracks. And you have a front again, but you can't see all of the toes. You can see these 3 fairly clearly. But you can see this hind track really clearly. So here's the pad right there. This is the left hind. So here's a pad associated with toe 5. This pad is associated with toe 3 and toe 4. Can't really make it out very well, but there's a pad here associated with toe number 2. And toe number 1 is not really clear right there. So let me find a better set of left tracks. Just a moment. Here we have a nice set of tracks headed to the left. So it's going from here to here. And you have your right tracks here and your left tracks here. Again, this is mink, and they're not huge. Here's a ruler. Inches scale. Centimeter scale. Okay, so which one's right and which one's left? So look for the inner toe, toe number 1, and you can see it here on this hind track and here on this front track. Here, the front track is right here, and the hind track is on top of it again. So the hind tracks really aren't often that perfectly clear. They sort of obliterate part of the front track. So what to look for? Look for toe number 1 to be further back in the track. On the front track, it's almost even with 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Look for the shape of this pad, the metacarpal pad, to be wider over here. Toe 3 and 4 sharing a pad, narrowing in that direction. This track, the hind track, toe number 5 is missing. Excuse me, toe number 1 is missing over here. 2, 3, 4, and 5 are there. They're very symmetrically oriented, almost like a canine. And here's the pad. Again, toe 3 and 4 share this pad. Toe 5 has its own, and you can't see the rest. So over here on the left, we have a very nice hind track. One thing you notice right off is that toe number 1 is way back in the track, as opposed to this, where it was almost even with toe 5. Toe 5 is up here and toe 1 is way down here. So if you cut a line across those, it's almost flat and it leaves this toe way down there. So this is the hind track, the left hind track, toe 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Again, the pad right here belongs to toe 5. This bigger pad belongs to toe 3 and 4. Can't see that one very well, but you can kind of see the pad for toe number 1. Here is your front track. This is the claw mark of toe number 1. So draw a line in toe number 1 and 5 right across from each other. 2, 3, 4, and 5. You can see the very sharp claws. Their claws kind of dig into the sand sometimes. Other times they just rest sort of on the surface and don't make a big mark. So don't use claw marks, presence or absence, as a definitive clue to tell you what track you have. Look at track size and the morphology of the foot. On mustelids, which mink are, you have that sort of chevron-shaped pad back here. So this set of tracks shows a little more clearly which one is front and which one is hind. So position tells you this one's the hind because it's on top of this one. But have a look at those toes. So right here you have toe 1 and toe 5. Those other toes are in more of an arc as opposed to this. If you were to do that, notice how the toes on the hind are more grouped together. They're not splayed, they're not in an arc. They're more ranked, like here's one rank, here's another rank. They're very symmetrical, without toe number 1, of course. If you consider toe number 1, this track looks very asymmetrical. So if you were to cut it in half like that, it'd be very asymmetrical, because that toe isn't aligned with this toe. But here, you cut it in half, pretty much mirror images. So that's one way to tell front from hind. Front being the mirror image, symmetrical, and the hind being asymmetrical. So this one shows much more clearly the structure of the pads, where your larger pad is on the outside. These two toes share a pad, and then it slopes down to the smaller pads here. So what I wanted to talk about here is the gait. This is called a 2x2 lope, and there's a set of 2 tracks and a set of 2 tracks followed by a space. The space is the airborne part of the gait, where the animal its body is stretched out and none of the feet are on the ground. But when they land front hind, that's a lope. So this animal is using this gait. They usually use it when they're out of the water and they're on the river bars, like where these tracks are, because they're open. They're out there exposed to any predators or any other animal that might want to catch them or hassle them. So they tend to move fast when they're out here, so they use this loping gait. And they also have very long bodies, long narrow bodies, and relatively short legs. So this is a pretty efficient gait for them when they're moving around out here. So that's a little introduction to Mink Tracks. I hope you've enjoyed.